Hello everybody and welcome to another exciting episode of Radiorama where I show you how to work on everything from radios, record players, TV sets, but usually just tons and tons of radios. And today we have a national brand which actually would go on to later be called Panasonic. And it's interesting because what we have here is actually a Japanese market set. You know, of course, Japan started exporting things like mad, but this is a true Japanese market set. Everything in the back of it, it's all in Japanese. It says it's a model GM-520, and it has 6 tube if we count the I tube. We've got 2 tubes in here that aren't as common, 1983 and a 38.5. I'm guessing those might have some cross compatibility. That's probably the output tube. 38.5 and 19A3 is probably a triode. I'm guessing this probably has a solid state rectifier because none of these look like a rectifier type tube. It's probably a selenium rectifier. Being Japanese, it probably operates on 100 volts versus 120. Yeah, you see here, 50 to 60 cycles and 100 volts. So yeah, it's getting a little more juice here in the States. My house operates on about 117 volts. It'll be fine. It won't hurt anything. I don't know if it works, but we're going to go ahead and try it out. It's kind of on-off button that doesn't seem to really be clicking. I'm not sure if there's gunk tied up in it, but let's go ahead and plug it in. I can't even... I have no way of knowing if that's on. Let me look in the back here. Okay, I do see tube filaments. I think it's on shortwave. It does work. But volume pot is really dirty. Let's see if this button actually works. Well, that's no good. Well, alright, well, I'll take it apart anyway. The other thing I don't like about it is someone sprayed something all over it. I don't know what it is. At first I thought it was paint. But whatever it is seems to come right off. I'm wondering, maybe it's not paint. Let's see what happens when I do this. Shit, that's going to be all kinds of fun to get that off of there. That really sucks because I got it on, looks like they got it on the grill. I might have to take the grill off and repaint it. Damn it, I wish people were more careful around their electronics. But then again, this was probably some junker radio in someone's garage for years. Let's see, it looks like the back is just held in with friction. So let's pop it off here and see what's going on in there. Huh. Got the schematic sticking in there on the side. Matsushita. I'm probably saying that wrong. That's a pretty famous brand. 19A5. No, that doesn't look like a triode at all. That looks like... it looks like a rectifier. I don't know. I'm not familiar with a 19A5. Now, the other thing... I'm going to bet money this is actually a actual real hot chassis set. Maybe not. Maybe not. We have, this is the electrolytic capacitor, and we can see it's got cardboard around it. So that's isolated. That's a good sign. Getting these apart is sometimes not easy. They seriously remind me of some German sets where, you know, it's not easy just to take the whole thing out in one piece. The most difficult part is usually getting the tuning indicator off. And what you do is you wait until you can see this little screw here. You unscrew it, and then you can lift the tuning cable off. What I do is I'll mark on either side with a permanent marker, so I'll know exactly where it goes on when I put it back in there. But I have to be real careful pulling this out of here, because, again, I'm not familiar with these two tubes, and if I break one of them, I'll probably have to order one online, because I'm not sure if I or the museum has any. But I do want to get this case apart, because, again, I'm probably going to have to do a lot of work on getting all that paint splatter nonsense off of there. Alright, so I pulled the chassis and the speakers out all in one piece. And, you know, this is something I have actually encountered before when it comes to domestic market sets intended for the Japanese market, is that generally the domestic stuff is much better quality than what we got in the US. Because back in the 50s and 60s, they would just dump stuff, you know, and so we would get all the cheap stuff, and of course they had all the quote-unquote good stuff. And the quality of this is quite nice. We have a lot of oil caps in here, which are probably just fine. Unlike virtually every other 50s Japanese set I've seen that was sold here, it's a floating ground versus a hot chassis, which is, you know, no bueno. So we have this cap going to ground 0.03 microfarads. It's pretty good value. A lot of American sets you'll see 0.05, which is kind of getting a little on the chintzy side. You know, you probably shouldn't do it. I don't know what this guy is. Looks like a cap with a shield around it. Now, I took the cabinet over here to take a look, and the switch, it just seems like it's not coming back up. I think we've got, this is all gunked up. I'm probably to spray it with some WD-40 or something to get that loosen up. I just happened to buy some yesterday. Actually, I had to use quite a bit of it yesterday because I was on my way back from over an hour and a half away from my house. And fucking A, I just dropped my Coke. Ugh. Anyway, the brake caliper on my truck decided to seize up. So I had to pull over and do a on the side of the road repair. And luckily there was a parts store nearby. But to get the bolts off, I had to use half my can of WD-40 because the truck's 20-something years old. Yeah. I might have to hit that with some heat, because that is all gunked up. That's not working. But I'm not concerned about that. First things first, I'm going to clean up the Coke that I just spilled all over the floor and get to work replacing capacitors, even though I'd bet most caps in there are perfectly fine. I don't see any bulging. I don't see any crap oozing out of the bottom of that electrolytic. These paper caps all need to be replaced, of course. This guy, that's a cap. That's polystyrene. That's fine. Oil caps are probably just fine. That little electrolytic only has about 10 volts on it, or 25 volts. It's probably fine. But again, you know, as we heard, the pots are really dirty, so we'll need to clean those up. So how many paper caps we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 or 9 paper caps. Got this big whopper of a cap here, 0.5. 0.5 of a microfarad. That's quite large. I'm not sure what that does. But I need to look at the schematic, which I was able to pull out. Let's see if I can read it. It's tiny. To see what the value of those electrolytics are. it's tiny. I mean, I've got glasses on and everything. Usually you'd see it associated with the filament string. There's one at 50 microfarad. Where's the others? Well, I'm boring you guys trying to find this. I'll find it, and then we'll replace the electrolytics, and then get rid of all these old paper caps. Well, here's something interesting. Electrolytics are fine. I just tested them, and they're fine and healthy. So usually I replace electrolytics. I think these are okay. I am going to replace those paper caps, though, because I just don't trust those at all. But what's interesting is when I was testing it, let me show you what's going on here. Let me plug it in. Give it a second to warm up. All right, here we go. Hear that? So what that unpleasant scratching noise is that there's little metal cat whiskers that are in these fins, and they're rubbing up against each other. And so that can cause, you get like teeny little shorts between the plates, can mess up your radio reception. First thing you want to do, and unfortunately I ran out of compressed air, but I have tons of circuit freeze, which is not going to do anything, but it'll still blast lots of air. There we go. And then what I'll do is I'll crank it up to the most extreme end of either side. I got little chunks of a business card that I slice up. By the way, if you ever want to get capacitors, Sal's Capacitors is my supplier. He's based out of New Jersey, does a good job. Thanks, Sal. Hope you're watching and hope you're doing well. Alright, so what you want to do is take the little bits of business card and you go down in between each and every single one of these. And you can do it more than once, too. And you just want to clean all that stuff out of there. And, most of the time I find that the first time you do it, it doesn't make a bit of difference at all. Because all it takes is just one little teeny metal cat whisker to mess you all up. But maybe Lady Luck is looking down upon me today, so let's see if that made any sort of difference. Probably not. It'd be nice if it would. It'd be a nice surprise. Well, let's see. I think I made it worse.
Not only a state senator, but also a PD would require a $25 fee per gun-owning household.
That didn't make a bit of difference. Anyway, sometimes it just takes a lot of patience. But I want to get this solved before I spend any more time on this, because if I can't solve it, then I've got other problems, namely an unusable radio. But usually I can get them unstuck. Alright, seems like I've gotten rid of all the crackles and stuff. But seems like the set, unless I just got the antenna position wrong, is not super happy.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
I'm sure you guys really needed to hear that. I think it's time to check some tubes, because a good bit of these tubes are American tubes anyway. Yeah, basically 3 of these are plain old plain Jane American tubes. So we'll check those guys out. I'll even check these others. Output is 30A5. 19A3 is the rectifier. That is a strange one. I don't think I've ever seen this used. I mean, I've never seen this tube. I can't think of a 19-volt rectifier. Interesting. Oh well. Let me get out my Hickok TV7 and we'll do some investigating to see if these tubes are weak. Alright, welcome to day 2 of working on the Panasonic radio. And last night I tested all the tubes. They all actually test really good. I cleaned up the chassis a little bit. I cleaned all the controls. I cleaned the tube sockets. And that seems to have improved the performance, definitely.
In me and for me and through me and to me, whatever he chooses, because
as everybody lines up behind us. South 101 Santa Clara, slow from Montague Expressway to De La Cruz Boulevard. You get a short break.
But it's not been overhauled in the least. It's all got the original caps in it, so we could improve the performance even more because we could have some leaky caps that are in the IF and RF stages. So let's go ahead and get down to business. Like I said, this electrolytic is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, which is unusual. Just good quality stuff, I guess. This guy barely comes on. It's got filament, but the phosphor is quite weak. Well, these guys, I'm not sure if it's the phosphor or if it's the plates, but they wear out pretty quick. This style anyway. The ones that had the phosphor on the side of the tube for the miniature tubes, those tend to be really good, and they'll last for years and years. So what we need to do here, as I showed yesterday, is replace all of these guys, all of these paper caps. And this one, yeah, that is a shield. You can see it's going to the center of this tube here. So probably what I could do is just pull that out of there. See what value it is. I guess it goes to this, what is this, the volume pot? Could look on the schematic and see what value it is. If I can read it with my teeny little print here. Dun, 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 dun. I can barely read this. I'll figure it out. I'm not going to do it during the video because that's boring. But we're off to a good start here. Like I said, these oil caps are probably just fine. I may or may not replace them anyway. That resistor's just a little bit warm. That's fine. Alright, it's off to the races. Let's do some recapping. Okay, so I'm like partially done with the recap job. There's about 7 of them that have been replaced so far. We have a few left yet. The most important one in the whole set is this guy. Now, the value is probably okay, but it's the wrong kind of cap. And what I mean by that, what if there was a catastrophic lightning strike or something otherwise that caused this to fuse together? Then you wouldn't have any of the protection offered by the amount of current reduction by this cap anymore. Instead, you'd have a fused together aluminum mass, and then one end of the AC line would be completely hot. So we need to replace that guy with one of these. It's an X2, Y2 cross the line rated cap. Important because if something really bad happens here, this guy will split open. That'll terminate radio operation, but it will prevent the set from going hot, like true hot. So we'll replace that. And we need to replace that guy too. Again, I think these are okay. I'm kind of like, well, if I'm in here, maybe I should go ahead and do it. But I've never had one of these go bad on me. They're pretty reliable. All right, so we got our recapping job done. That weird shielding one, I could not find it on the schematic because it was just too teeny for me to read. So I wound up just cutting the case open to find it was a .01 rated cap, which makes sense. It's going to the center of the volume control. That's usually what I would expect to see. So I'm not sure if the shield does much of anything, but I decided to, keep it as it was designed. So I just got a piece of aluminum tape that you can use in your air conditioning ducts and all that stuff. I keep a roll of it around for little purposes like that. So let's see if A, the set still works, which I hope it does, and B, that maybe it works better than it did before. Anyway, it's firing up right now. It looks like maybe one of these tubes is a little wonky. Let's adjust that. I don't like that at all. There we go. All right, now.
Shut down factories. Ed Donahue reports. The Commerce Department.
Last month that changed a federal to pick up in person. I'm Shelley Adler.
On Wall Street, the Dow down by 66 points.
Yeah, it's pretty sensitive, but I think I need to put a bigger antenna on this thing. Because all we got is this little wire here. It's not much of an antenna.
In their business than it was a few months ago. Let's sail them.
Of course. This is Russian President Putin.
To stop administering monoclonal antibody treatments made by Regeneron.
Seems like it's working pretty good, actually. I wasn't twisting the dial that much and still getting a lot of stations. And that's just with this little pissant antenna. So I imagine if I doubled the length of that antenna, it would work even better. Anyway, she seems to be like a happy radio right now. The last thing I'm going to do before I work on the cosmetics is do a safety test on the chassis to make sure that we're not going over the set current limits that our organization has set it at, which what I do is I have a little test rig over here. I put it on 2 volts AC range. Our maximum current, well, voltage on the, or current on the chassis is 0.6, essentially. So I need to plug that in and bring the set over there and do a test to make sure it's still going to pass. Okay, so the set is unfortunately failing. Let me show you what I mean here. So remember, kind of sunny out here, it's hard to tell. Threshold is 0.6 on this meter, and we want to touch the chassis with the set on. 0.85, so that is 0.2 above where we want to be. It's not really that bad, but I think I know what the issue is. We have 2 grounds in here coming off of, I think one of them's coming off of one of the tubes as a shield. So we've got some leakage probably coming out of that tube. The question is, sometimes when you clip those things, your reception will either be very poor or non-existent, or it won't do anything. It's hard to tell. I'm looking at where that came from. It looks like one of those is from a shield coming off of 12AV6. So that shouldn't be any sort of... Hey there. Mailman just came by. Anyway, that one shouldn't be a problem because that lead is not touching the metal case. Or is it? That's a good question. No, it's not. But the other one is probably coming from a shield off of its neighboring tube. So let me cut this guy off and clip that and see if that changes anything. All right, well, I've clipped everything that I can find that goes to ground, save for the grounding cap, and it's still just a little bit off. I mean, it's not a horrible amount off. It's just a little bit off. And here's the thing. Last week, I tested another set that did something similar, which is essentially it barely failed. And then when I took it to the museum where we have a duplicate of this setup, it passed. So I'm not really sure. I'll know for sure if I take it over there and do a test just to confirm. But, I mean, still, the amount of current on this chassis is pretty damned low. It's fine. But, you know, have to follow safety protocols. So 0.6 it will be. Now, moving on, the more difficult part of this project is going to be removing all this, whatever it is, paint splatter. It's probably paint splatter. It's annoying, but that's going to be a lot of work to remove all that. That's going to require a lot of elbow grease It's unfortunate that it's all over the grill here, because I'm probably going to come in here. Oh my God, like they've used glue to glue down the tabs coming through this thing. It's pretty shitty glue. Shouldn't be hard to get those panels off of there because it breaks immediately. The other thing I did yesterday was I greased and heated this switch thing up. So now it actually works pretty well, see? Whee! Turns off and on now. It's much better than it was before. Something else I just noticed here. We got a crack. Could have swore it. There's one here. You see that? But it doesn't translate all the way to the front. I'll put a little glue in there just to make sure that's nice and tidied up. But, meantime, first what I'm going to do is use the old, reliable, predictable product that I use on everything, which is Novus number 2 plastic polish. I'm going to do a test run, see if I can just wipe the stuff off. If not, I don't know what I'm going to do, because otherwise I'd have to use steel wool or something awful, and it's going to totally mess the cabinet up. So, who knows? This might be a really fugly looking set that works and sounds really nice. Well, guess what? That spray paint's not coming off of there very easily at all. I tried polish, didn't do anything. I tried some abrasives, that didn't do anything. So, I don't know, to salvage the project, I'm probably going to go over the whole damn thing with steel wool, which is going to really make the surface look like crap, but what I'm hoping, I'll do that, then I'll have to get out the mechanical buffer and just buff the crap out of this thing. This could be a total failure. I'm totally willing to film a failed project. I don't want everything to be peaches and cream. You know, we all make mess-ups. We'll see. Well, I've decided to call it quits for the night. This took about an hour or two just getting all the spray paint off. I haven't gotten it off of here or the plastic, which is going to be all kinds of fun, but most of the set has no spray paint. So, tomorrow maybe I'll continue making progress on it. If I'd known this was going to be such a, I don't know, elbow grease, who knows. Oh well, see you guys tomorrow. Hey everybody, and welcome to day number 3 of working on the Panasonic. And this is a result of probably about 2.5 hours of scrubbing. I tried a bunch of different chemicals. I tried carb cleaner, rubbing alcohol, WD-40, plastic polish, and steel wool. And needless to say, almost all the spray paint is gone except for the stuff on the plastic front end here. For the dial, I'm going to have to use probably just a whole bunch of elbow grease, because I can't use steel wool on this, so it'll just completely dull it up. The other thing is, I noticed this morning, there is a little bit of a crack here, but it doesn't seem to really move. I think it's because this is kind of holding it together, so I'm not sure if I need to glue that. I was able to get all the spray paint off of the speaker covers. Do need to clean them up a little bit. They're a little bit dirty. This whole thing is kind of dirty. I think it was probably in a smoker's house, which is, you know, it's not uncommon. Everyone smoked back then. And undoubtedly, probably a lot of people smoked in Japan, too. I'm not sure how long this thing's been in the United States. Maybe it's been here the whole time. Usually when you have stuff that's from overseas that was domestic, I usually find it was either bought by U.S. personnel stationed overseas who brought it back home, or they were immigrants. Where I live has a long history of Japanese immigration. There's a fairly decent Japanese-American community here, and so maybe someone brought this with them. I don't know. I'll probably never find out, but You know, the electronics are done. Getting this polished up is going to take longer than anything. And I think what I'm going to do in order to save myself the amount of pain, I'm going to get out my electric buffer and go to town with this Novus number 2. And I'm not going to worry about making a mess, because if I just, if I get it in the nooks and crannies and crevices, I can always take it over to the sink and give it a scrub job. If I could reach back in time to the person who sprayed this with spray paint, oh, would I have words for them. Alright, so here's my handy dandy Porter cable oscillating buffer. I use this thing saves my hands. I use it on all my vehicles, and if I get a radio, it's a pain in the ass like this. This is a good tool. They're about 120 bucks, but it's good. It's an American brand, and it's got variable speeds on it, so I can speed it up and slow it down. You want to start off in your slowest setting, because otherwise you'll just sling it all over the place. And you got to make contact with it. And obviously I'm not going to sit here and film the probably hours it's going to take for me to buff this all up. But that's probably what it's going to take to bring back the shine, since I basically sanded it all off last night. So hopefully I'll make this be able to look like something. Okay, so this is after about an hour and a half of using the mechanical buffer, but then I've decided to shift over to using, well, basically a rag, and do it by hand so you can get more detail. But it seems like maybe this plastic's a little softer than some of the American sets I've worked on, because it seems like it does polish up really nicely. Like you can get rid of haven't even polished this up yet. Yeah, you see that? The plastic's just really coming along. Should probably spend, I don't know, a little bit more time on this, and I think it's coming out pretty good. The plastic is going to be pretty shiny. All right, welcome to the last day of working on the Panasonic, and I spent probably about 2 hours working on the case, and it's looking pretty good last night anyway. The last thing I need to do to the case, there is kind of a slight crack back here. It's pretty thick, tough plastic, but I'm going to use my Gorilla Super Glue to glue that back together again. And then I'll set it aside. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add an audio input feature to the chassis, which on this one will be easier because it already has a selection here for phono, which means it's already switched, which already means that it isolates itself from anything related to the IF signal. So I can leave out some of the components I usually add when I do that feature. So I'm going to glue that. I'm going to bring the chassis over here and we'll add that feature. Hopefully by the end of this session, I'll have it all back together again. It's Thursday. It's Brothers Night. You'll be here in 2 hours. I think we'll be done by then. All right, so here we are, the last part of the process. And we're going to add an audio input feature. This set already actually comes with one. It has a jack in the back. It's kind of a strange, I've never seen this style before, but this is the phono input. You can tell, I find it fascinating, even though everything's in Japanese, it still says PU, that means pickup. We have positive and negative already marked. How nice. So this is the negative, this is the positive. That positive is going to this wafer switch, and that wafer switch is what turns it from AM to shortwave to phonograph pickup. So I'm assuming that is the switch that disconnects the IF signal and runs the audio directly through the amp section of the radio. So that does a lot of work for us that we don't have to do on this radio, because ordinarily what I'll have to do is add a few capacitors, well, a capacitor and a resistor going into from the primary, because these sets have an automatic gain control, and I find that these transformers can kind of mess around with that a little bit. I call this an isolation transformer, but it's not that complicated. All it is that the primary side has 110 volts coming in. The secondary side is 12 volts out. Now, we're not dealing with near that amount of voltage. In fact, it's probably negligible. We're just doing this for additional, almost guaranteed, pretty much dead bulletproof safety. This is going to prevent any sort of meaningful current getting from this to that. you know, if I just ran it directly through this, even though we've got a very small valued capacitor going to chassis ground, someone, if they were to do this and say touch concrete floor, I don't know, touch a faucet or something, they might get a little bit of a tingling sensation, which is not nice. It's uncommon. It'd be hard to do, but still, this is just added safety. But what we're going to do is we have a stereo line. We have a right and a left channel. You kind of got to figure these out sometimes. I order these guys in bulk, and I order 6-foot cables, and that way you can cut them in half because 3 feet's perfectly long. And we're going to put this set of resistors. I can't remember what these are. I think these are 90 something valued, 90 ohms or something to that degree. Those go on the secondary side, which is the 12 volt output side. And these two go to these two lugs here, positive and negative. And then we'll need to find a place for the line to come in for this guy. I'm thinking it might be able to squeeze in through this grommet here. Otherwise you have to drill a hole, which I don't like, because then you have to make sure that the hole has all of its rough edges filed down and everything, so it's not going to tear the cord or, you know, cut the cord. And what I tend to do also is I'll clean a surface close to the input source and then use some glue. Now, I've got a little bit of a raised area here. I'm not sure if that's going to be completely flat. No, it's not. We've got that rivet in the way to kind of do it this way. Yes, I can. So we're going to do it that way. Might need to maybe move some of this stuff down a little bit so I can push this down just ever so slightly. Just clearing out a little room for this guy. Yeah, that should be fine. And before I button it up, I'll usually get some hot glue and just like cover this up. I know it's kind of gross looking, but it prevents any possibility if this ever were to work itself loose, it's not going to like hit any of this stuff, because I don't want any of that. I don't want any of these contacts exposed. All right, so we got the audio situation all taken care of here. We've got our isolation transformer with our 2 split resistors for our right and left channel. Incoming audio line with a knot coming through this hole. I'll put a little glue in there to keep it from moving around and chafing. And I'll put a little glue on top of this stuff here too. But I've got my Bluetooth running. The selector is set to Phono Input, and it seems to be working all right.
And the next night he leaves her sitting with a bad case of the blues.
Seems to be working pretty good. So, after I heat up the glue gun and get that all glued together, it'll be time to do some reassemblage and some final testing. And I think we'll be able to wrap this one up and put it in the can. I guess that's not a good phrase. Putting it in the can usually means putting it in the garbage. So the opposite of that. Well, I thought I was done, but then I had the strangest thing happen. I had no sound, and then I wiggled this tube, and I'd get sound, and it quit working as soon as I let it go. I never had a repair that I can do without taking the set apart again, but this power resistor, not sure if this is filming right, it's kind of loose for this pin here. So I need to solder that back in. I can do it without having to remove it. That is very nice. Usually I get a gift from the electronic gods once every few months. This must have been this month's gift. Alright, she's all done now. Having it play here for a little while. Son of a gun, this is a good sounding radio.
As I know there's a God above, time can't change my love at all. Time may make the morning cease to be.
Well, YouTube's going to peg me for copyright on that, but whatever. It's a good song. I was able to solder that resistor back in place. Let me just make sure that nothing else has come loose back here.
Time can't change my love at all.
Knock the damn radio off the case here, or the shelf here. All right, I'm gonna let it play for a little bit longer. Put the back on, and if she's still playing in a few hours, then it's probably good to go. A pretty looking set, you know. Nice color. Anyway, as usual, thanks for putting up with all of my stupid shenanigans and mistake makings and fumbles and whatnot. But this one seems like it was a happy ending. We had an ugly radio with a lot of spray paint all over it. And now it looks fantastic. And we even got a switch that works. It even has a nice feel to it. And so like I said, I'll let it play for a little bit longer. But in the meantime, it's pretty much done. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments or things you just want to talk about, make sure and leave them down in the comments section below. And if you like what you see, make sure and press that like button. All right, everybody, until the next time a radio or whatever comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.